This video was brought to you by NCIX. Great technology, selection, and service.
Alright, so the Steam Castle from Deepcool looks like something out of a Star Wars themed mod competition. I mean, look at those glossy round edges and overall totally bizarre aesthetics. If it wasn't for that windowed side panel, you'd definitely think this was some type of an appliance, and we would totally agree with these exhaust-like 4 circular vents up top that are actually lighting additions, and we also have these radiator-like plastic pieces on each side of the front. And to be honest, I kind of like what they were going for here, but is it functional? And obviously that's the more important thing than the looks, considering this is priced at $100. And given what you can get for $100 today in today's case market, we have a lot of options, so you really must be in love with the design to drop that much cash into the Steam Castle. Now, one disappointing thing right from the start was the bent frame. It looks like the foam packaging wasn't enough to withstand the gentle handling of delivery personnel. Now, on a better note though, the paint job here is done well with uniform white tones between the plastic and steel panels that are somewhat glossy, so well done. There are a few ventilation ports at the front, like these radiator looking things without any dust filtration for some reason, plus some extra venting up top and at the bottom of the case. Removing the panel, we find a 200mm fan with really thin blades that I doubt will do much for airflow, plus a heavily restricted frame that will reduce the cooling potential. There's a single optical bay and a 3.5-inch internal bay only, as the front panel doesn't have an appropriate cutout for the latter. All the connections are on the opposite side of the window. That includes this wheel for fan speed adjustment for up to 3 fans that are SATA powered, PR buttons, 4 USB ports, and audio jacks, and I think all of these are out of reach, and top placement is more functional, even if it means modifying the looks. Also, the incredibly inconvenient process of needing to wire everything once you close the panel is just such a pain, and it takes away from the otherwise user-friendly design. Now, this wheel is also in charge of top LEDs with 3 colors available, so green, red, and blue, with brightness control, and as you can see, it looks pretty unique. They did really a good job with this type of lighting implementation. The side panel is large and revealing. The back side includes an exhaust fan, 4 PCI slots, as this does support micro ATX and mini ATX motherboards, a removable dust filter for your power supply, and a little ventilation behind which a 2.5-inch drive cage is located. At the bottom we find a few rubber pads along with indented ventilation for your power supply to breathe. Removing the top panel, we get centered dual 120 and 140mm mounts, but internal mounting only, as there's not enough clearance above the frame, and this very reminiscent of Beat Phoenix, Prodigy, and Phenom cases, as the internal layout is almost identical. Inside we find full 12 inches of clearance for your graphics card until you hit the intake fan, but the 3.5-inch bay does interfere with the first PCI bracket. Luckily it is removable. Also be mindful of the optical bay above for cable clearance for those PCI Express cables. Power supplies up to 170mm are supported, but as you can see, it can get really tight given how little room we have, and I would have liked to see the rear installation instead of mounting from the side, just to ease the process of assembly. As for storage, there are only 2 brackets for mechanical drives. They do widen for installation, so no need to flex the caddy, and they also have centered SSD mounts. And speaking of SSDs, there are 2 dedicated slots right beside the power supply that are well utilized, although a 3rd slot would have fit no problem. They are easy to install and route, as all the cabling is right there, plus we have appropriate cutouts on the motherboard tray for routing everything into the main chamber. Now, this front portion is removable for a potential installation of a front rad, but this gets rid of all your mechanical storage and some additional standoffs for micro ATX boards, and this process is not made entirely easy, with first needing to peel the rubber at the bottom to access the screws to remove the bottom panel. One of the screws had a worn thread that was a slight hiccup in the entire disassembly, but luckily I managed to get it out. So with that out of the way, plus the 3.5-inch and the optical bays removed, you can fit a 240mm radiator, but it's right in the center, so it is on the way for the first PCI bracket, plus limiting GPU clearance to 11 inches with a set of fans. So if you're considering water cooling, I would suggest utilizing the top slot for your radiator, but still be mindful of your other options. And with the build complete, the internal structure makes total sense for cable management with great compartment separation and appropriate cable routes. For example, all the cables are nicely contained at the bottom and routed through the cutout for the GPU and a 24-pin cable. We used an all-in-one cooler that fit well with the build, and the assembly process to the most part was smooth without any problems. That is, until you have to put on that side panel and magically become the cable management master. And so the Steam Castle does a lot of things well, starting with the exterior looks that are unique, and while not for everyone of course, the implementation of LED lighting really makes this stand out. The internal structure is well put together with enough storage potential, modular design to cater to your hardware, and appropriate cable routing with chamber separation. A few things though we would love to see changed is to relocate that 3.5-inch bracket off center so you can still utilize it without compromising on GPU clearance. A rear mounted power supply would be more ideal, and side ports and buttons need to be moved somewhere to the front or the top to avoid the hassle of dealing with all those cables. Also, the process of removing the support frame for installation of a front radiator definitely needs to be simplified. But what do you guys think of this approach from Deepcool with the steampunk style chassis? As aside from mostly functional internal layout, you really gotta love the exterior looks for this to house your next build. So as always, thanks for watching. Don't forget to leave us a like if you enjoyed this review. Make sure to subscribe to this channel for more similar content, and we'll see you in the next one.